And a lot of our members have into production of not honey, but also pollen and the beeswax and propolis and even apitoxin. So here are 5 objectives and our goal. Let this workshop be a platform for us to begin to think as a nation, for us to begin to think and not become stagnant, for us to know where the sources of information are for our development, and for you to know, for us to also support the Ministry of Agriculture in moving forward. And we have experts like Brent here as well from ICA who can assist us. So we're building up an architecture, an ecosystem of support for you that will be there to help the industry grow over time. Any questions before we continue? Is that clear to everybody? Okay, my brothers and sisters. Okay. Let us move on to the next presentation in the I don't know how these people have done that, you know. Okay. Okay, it's coming up momentarily. Titled Using Systems Theory to Understand and Manage Apiculture Systems. I hope by the end of this presentation you'll understand what systems theory is. You begin to use it in your thought process, in your analytical process. You'll be called upon to do some work at tables during this presentation, a group of 4 at tables, so we should have at least 4 per table. So those persons who are in single will have to move towards a table where there is at least 4. Okay, so remember that word systems. What is a system? You should be thinking about that. Okay, when we talk about systems theory, one of the first points we make is that the whole is more than the summation of the parts. The earth, the whole earth, or the biosphere is considered a system. The human body is considered a system. In fact, you cannot take an eye, or you can't take a toe and say it is a system. The human body is a collection of parts that works together that makes it into a functioning biological system. The rainforest is a major natural system. Even a car is a system. So you can have systems that are natural, living things, and you can have systems that are man-made, mechanical things. What is important is that if you take the part of a human being, you can't call it a human being. The human being is everything working together, the eyes, the nose, the nervous system, the blood vessels, everything working together. So a system is an integrated whole, not a single part. It is connected. Everything is connected to each other. So that's the first point you have to remember. The characteristics of a system. A system has a boundary. Just like yourself, your skin represents your boundary, okay? And that skin, that boundary can be permeable or impermeable, meaning that permeable means things can pass through it easily, water, air, moisture, toxins, etc. Or impermeable, that means things cannot pass through it easily. So the first thing about a system is that it has a boundary. And you must identify that boundary, okay? The next thing about it is it interacts with the external environment An open system, your body, if your body is a system, it interacts with the air, with the water. You interact with your colleagues, and so on. Even a car interacts with the external environment. For it to function sustainably, a system must have inputs. You eat, you drink water, you inhale air, you excrete matter, both liquid and solid. Inputs and outputs. What? So inputs and outputs are important in systems. So in the human system, we have inputs and then we have outputs. Okay. There's another thing called throughput. Things can pass through your system slowly, or just at the right speed, or very quickly. If you think when you have a diarrhea, that's passing through your system very, very quickly, right? If your digestive system is working well, it goes through smoothly. Sometimes it blocks and stays and can cause all kinds of residual things. So in a system, we have to understand how things move through the system and what in that movement it causes. Does it contribute to the health of the system, or can it pollute the system or even destroy the system? And we even can think of society as a system where we have values, we have norms, we have culture that we use. For example, in parts of Africa, they would have old, traditional, but very good environmental management practices that says, do not touch that forest because our ancestors lived there. And we might say, boy, that is by longtemps. We'll say, boy, that is bad. You know, let's go and destroy the forest. But it is those traditional tribes' ways of protecting that piece of property or that forest. Okay? So let us go again. A system has a boundary. For it to survive, it has inputs, throughputs, and outputs, and it functions within its boundary and it interacts with the environment. Okay. Now, this is an apiary. I want you to do the first exercise to me. You have pads, you have notepads and pens. I want you to draw your apiary on your pad. Include as much information as you can in that drawing. Is there a river? Is there a road? What kind of trees are there? And demarcate the boundary of your apiary for me. Okay? So all of you all have apiaries. Select one apiary. If you don't have an apiary, sit down with somebody that has an apiary. The new people over there. So maybe Richard, you consider that group there. Those groups that don't have apiaries, you know, take your exercise, your writing material, identify the apiary, draw the boundary, and put all the features that are associated with that apiary for me. You have 5 minutes to do that exercise. Please proceed. You all can do it together, or you all can do it individually and then compare. 5 minutes, please. Go ahead. outdoor boxes as well if you want. If there are houses, put houses, processing plants, put them.
What's your last name? That's my WhatsApp number. I don't have WhatsApp on my phone. So you have your Google, what happens? I know the string buffer. I'm trying to fix it. You have like that. So that this goes my so that any bookings and things they can use that. Yeah, no problem. So that is like work kind of thing. I pick up WhatsApp from my I'm calling from Australia and I'm trying to watch the film. Yes, I appreciate it. Then the next person.
Yeah, 6 hours, and then go through it on super.
So that's how you get one WhatsApp on number.
Four cents are really like that. That time is cool.
Who want to stand up and just describe what they've done? Quickly, volunteers? Or do I exercise my powers? Huh? Mr. Augustine? We have a lady going there. Go ahead, Brad. Please go loud. Please let's pay attention to the lady. Oh, come up here.
Good morning again, everybody. So, as I said earlier, I'm a trainee at the IAC headquarters in VG, and this is what our area looks like. We are currently occupying about 500 square feet of land, and just try to visualize what I'm saying. There is the main road near the apiary. After the main road, there are stairs going down to the IAC headquarters. Next to the headquarters, we have wax apple trees, we have cocoa trees, we have coconut trees. We have an observation room, that's a small room that is enclosed so that the bees don't come into the room while we're watching what's happening. And right next to the observation room are a few apiaries. We have about seven apiaries and sorry, 7 hives. Sorry, I'm sorry. We have 7 hives. Luckily for us, the area is very nice and cool because the ocean is right there. Thank you.
Another volunteer? Okay. MC, you have a portable mic?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is
No, take the mic. No, we haven't finished joining
Hold on
yet.
a second.
We haven't finished joining yet. You all just started.
Hold on one second. Just for the purposes of the recording, we will ask you to come up to the mic stand. We will set up it right where Mr. Doxery is standing, so that that camera can pick up them up.
Go ahead, let's go. Go ahead, son.
all right. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, for those who can see, this is a very you can see artistic challenge this morning. But basically, what you're seeing here, we have our apiary is about 50 feet by 100 feet. We have some ingrown shrubs and wild grasses around it for a little protection from the extreme sun. And in the boundaries, we have like mango trees, coconut trees. We have a few cashew nut trees. We have a few assorted fruits about around the property itself. We also are in the boundary with a ravine. We also, well, in that same area, not where the hives are, but in close proximity, we also do some farming. We try to do as much as, the words just keep flying from my mind. We try to go as natural as possible in terms of our production. We try to go organic, a lot of organic farming. Because of our hives, we try not to use no chemicals in that area. So everything we do there, along with our bees, is all natural. So for those of you whose eyes are good, this is what we do.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you very much.
One more person, one more group. Who would like to present? Oh, Marcus. Go ahead, over there. Use the mic there.
Okay, I'm presenting the apiary, our apiary at Balambush. We have occupied about a 1/4 acre of land. The main vegetation in that area is what is known as the Campeche. It's a dry part of Choiseul. We have a small hut for our storage, for tools, equipment, our gears, and we also do our processing of honey there as well. We have water storage tanks just next by. That's for access to water for the bees. And also in the past we were doing farming, but we ceased for now. The whole idea was to grow herbs and also tree crops for the bees to forage. I mean, it has a domino effect, source of food for the bees, and also to market vegetables to earn an income. Okay? We have access to roads, very easy to get to the apiary. The terrain is very flat, very conducive for persons with disabilities, to maneuver, to work out their hives. Our challenges right now, we need to relocate.
No, don't go to challenges yet. That's enough. Thank you, Marcus. We'll deal with that in a moment. Have a seat.
Yes. So that's we have about 15 hives at present as the main apiary.
15, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcus. Thank you. You will all get an opportunity to do the challenges in junior group work at point 11.0 in the program. I've moved it to this afternoon. So, okay, so let's go on. So a number of observations. Your apiaries are defined as the place where you actually work. Most of it is, you said quarter acre, right? Quarter acre is about the largest piece of land we have. And some people do mixed cropping of an organic kind. I'm not going to say anything about that yet. I want to introduce a concept later for us to really understand whether or not this is sustainable. So let's go on to the presentation. Okay, this is a kind of a difficult definition, but I tried to get a simpler one, and that's about the simplest, so I'm going to explain it to you. What is a system? It is a way of thinking. When you see things like theory, you think it's a big word. It's not a big word. A theory is a way of trying to understand something. So, an interdisciplinary theory. What does interdisciplinary mean? It means a number of subjects are brought together to understand the system. So you might have economics, ecology, physics, chemistry, business, all kinds of things that get brought together and used to interpret what you are seeing. So interdisciplinary, not multidisciplinary where you do things in categories like physics and chemistry and maths. Interdisciplinary means that they're integrated. About the nature of complex systems in nature, like your body is a very complex system, society can be a very complex system, and science. And it is a framework by which one can investigate and or describe any group of objects that work together to produce some results. Okay? This could be a single organism, any organization or society, or any electromechanical or informational artifact. Let me explain that in simple language to you. A system theory, allows you to look at a system with a boundary and encourages you to use different perspectives to understand that system. Look at the human body, very complex system. It doesn't only have blood circulating in your veins and arteries, but it has electromechanical signals. It has your nerves. When you get pricked in your foot, the brain sends a current to your foot to say, move it, if you get burnt, and so on. That is in a very confined, open system called the body. In bigger systems, like let's say a river valley or so, you might drop some toxic chemicals at the top. It eventually is going to permeate down and affect the rest of the river valley. What we are saying is that when you use systems theory, you do not constrict yourself to one perspective. You look at multiple perspectives, multiple disciplines to understand it. How does a system work? Okay? It has connections and linkages. Your apiary, for example, is connected to the larger environment. Your body is connected to the larger environment. Okay? It flows of information, right kind amount at the right. Information is flowing through your body for your heart to beat, for your brain to function, for you to walk, and so on. All these are important. A system that is integrated is sustainable. If your body was not integrated, you begin to have a breakdown in the body. If it becomes corrupted by cancer cells, a part of it starts to die. If you have a blood clot in one part of your head, it can kill you. So they're saying a thoroughly integrated system works in harmony. As the environment, I can't even see that. As the environment increases in complexity, it too must change. So you cannot, that's why we have climate change adaptation. The environment is changing, so we have to start to adapt, and we have to use different concepts. In nature, the same thing is happening. Animals and plants over time change as the environment gets colder or warmer. Open systems can become very complex. If you look at the evolution of man, you begin to see a complex system evolving over time, or even animals. Systems can be hierarchical. You can have a big system, a smaller system, a micro system, a smaller system, and so on. For example, you can say your community is a microsystem, your village is a mega system, your country is a bigger system. Okay? A very successful system can modulate itself. It can regulate itself. It can attain balance. It can be flexible. It is dynamic. It does not die. Once it starts to die, there is something about it. There's a psychosis about it. And a system that is successful continues to learn. As an individual, if you stop learning, copper smoke your pipe, particularly in this day and age. You must continue to learn, to investigate, to improve yourself. And yourself as a human being you have to consider yourself as an actor within the whole system, because whatever you do is affecting the system. The globe there to show you the biggest of the systems, the whole world. And what human beings have done now, they have overfished enough Atlantic cod, we have polluted the environment in the Gulf of Mexico. Our waters in St. Lucia, a lot of it has problems, and in the Caribbean as well. The Pacific has one of the biggest garbage dumps in the world. We do all kinds of things to our atmosphere, greenhouse gases, and that it's adversely affecting our global system. Now, this is an important aspect. I want you to understand that very well. What I call feedback loops. Have you ever had a headache? If you have a headache at 4 o'clock in the morning, you are likely to say, well, I'll want to sleep, relax, take a tablet to see if it can smother the headache. But yes, because those external tablets are not really curing, they may be affecting the symptoms, but not addressing the cause. Okay? Sometimes you have a headache and the intensity increases. It can increase and increase and increase until it kills you. It could kill you if it's high blood pressure. The human body that is integrated, when it has a problem, begins to initiate measures to bring the body back to equilibrium, to a state of integration or wholeness. So for example, if your body temperature exceeds the normal 47 degrees Celsius, nerve cells, endings in your skin begin to react, your brain sends signals out, you begin to sweat, and that reduces the temperature back to 46 degrees Celsius. The same weather, so you have a stimulus, which is the temperature rise, you have a sensor, which understands what's happening, you have the brain controlling the effect, and you have an effector. That is called negative feedback. Any attempt by a system to prevent itself from dying or returning the system to a state of equilibrium is called negative feedback. However, opposite of that is positive feedback, which is what is happening in terms of climate change now. The temperature is rising, the ice sheets are melting, we have more water in the oceans, we are absorbing more CO2 and GHGs and so on, and the more of that you have, the heat affects the temperature, and it goes on and on. So we are moving quickly towards a doomsday scenario. That's why we are talking about existential threats. That's why we are talking about, we are at a point where if we do not take measures to maintain temperatures below 1.5 carbon smoke pipes. In the context of apiculture, a varroa enters the colony. If you don't take action over time, it will destroy it. And so on. I don't know if this video can play. Let's see what happens. Okay, is that coming up? It's coming up on my screen, but not here. Anybody help?
Honeybees suffer from a parasite that is their most devastating pest, the varroa mite. This mite is widespread and common. It spreads viruses and will kill most colonies within a year or two if nothing is done. This bee has been fed on by varroa mites. She will never recover and will soon die. If you keep bees and do nothing to manage varroa mites, your bees will die. Hi, I'm Danielle Downey, Executive Director of Project Apis M.
And I'm Mark Dykes, President of the Apiary Inspectors of America. Nearby colonies.
Okay.
This bee has been fed on by varroa mites. She will never recover and will soon be Director of Project Apis M.
And I'm Mark Dykes, President of the Apiary Inspectors of America. Nearby colonies, even healthy ones, will likely be the next victims of these mites. Controlling varroa mites is part of being a responsible beekeeper. Don't let your bees, and then your neighbor's bees, suffer and die needlessly.
There are many treatments to control varroa mites, including organic protocols. Consult the Honeybee Health Coalition Tools for Varroa Management Guide, and also these educational videos to learn to monitor and treat your bees for varroa mites.
Could you bring me back? So the issue of varroa mite, if a varroa mite enters a colony, it can destroy the colony over time. It can take the colony into positive feedback if you don't have any interventions. However, if you intervene effectively, you can take it back to equilibrium, and that's negative feedback. So negative feedback is what we want our systems to have, so that they can go back to the original state of equilibrium and do not disintegrate. Okay, now I want to show you something else. A while ago I asked you to map out your apiary. With instinct, you drew your boxes and looked at the space where you controlled. But if you have to understand natural phenomena, this is not how bees work. Bees have, I'm told by my experts, have a 3-mile radius that they travel, right? If they have a 3-mile radius that they travel, and let's assume the apiary is in the center here, it means that you have to be concerned with what is around your apiary. If people are destroying the forest, if they're pouring toxic chemicals there, you have to be concerned about that. So it means using a kind of mapping technique, concentric circles. So I'll come to you in a moment, don't worry. A series of concentric circles. We can call the center area the core. That's where we put the boxes. And we go out in a series of 1-mile intervals. And it is important that when we are looking at the management of our sites, we look at the apiary as part of a larger area which has a 3-mile radius around. And we continue to monitor that system over time. If not, the environment around, we can call it the inner and the outer buffer zones, will be affected adversely, and then our apiary will be compromised. So if sustainability is the question, we cannot just be focused on the core and everything else is being destroyed around us. Eventually, you won't have a functioning, sustainable apiary anymore, okay? So we are promoting to you that when you are looking at your site, look at these concentric circles, okay? Try to do an assessment at least 3 miles from the core. Find out what vegetation is there. Find out what is happening there. Find out whether or not what is happening is going to adversely affect your bees. If there are poison chemicals entering the vegetation that the bees are using, it will end up in the honey. We will not be able to sell our honey to Europe. Investor in Lucia wouldn't be able to help us. So the point I'm making, if you use this concentric circle, you will be able to, when you locate your hives, do a full assessment using this kind of series of concentric circles. We can talk about it a little bit more in the discussion phase. The academic feedback requires effective monitoring. You cannot take action if you don't know what is happening. Therefore, we are suggesting that for every apiary, you have information that is well documented. The name of the apiary, its location, number of colonies, boxes, description of your core, inner buffer and outer buffer zones, the challenges you're facing, monitoring to learn and improve, monitoring systems, etc., etc. This can be designed into a nice template, and you have a template for each of your apiaries. And the important question is what Richard is going to answer very soon. How can you use scientific methods to monitor your colonies and apiaries in a cost-effective way? So that's where the science and the technology is going to become effective to help you, even when you're not at the apiary. We also recommend that you look at documents produced in St. Lucia. The Systems Plan for Protected Areas in St. Lucia, that was published in 1992 and 2009. The Forest Management Plans, the Biodiversity Conservation Plans, the Invasive Species Plans, the Climate Adaptation Plans. All of this is on the net. All of this you can go to the Sustainable Development website and get them. Learn about them, study them particularly in your area where you're functioning to understand what is happening. Because if you use that concentric circle model, you become more aware of what is happening, and you can become a better understander of environmental connections with your apiary. And you can look at your apiary as a system within a larger system. What should you remember today? In every system, define the boundary which will ensure that your apiary is sustainable. So your boundary is not the one you drew. That is not your boundary. All the boundaries you drew are where you have influence. But in natural systems, the boundaries are larger. So don't go and say, trotte moi, say by moi, ça m'intéresse qu'à faire là, c'est pas ça fait moi, ça mairie qu'à faire là, ça fait deux mairies, ça chalo qu'à faire là. You have to look at it in a symbiotic way. So that's what systems theory tells you. Know always that everything is in nature is linked to everything else. Tout bagay connected. I was most surprised when I was reading a marine document 2 years ago. They found a piece of plastic in one of the deepest parts of the ocean, almost 20-something thousand feet deep. Plastic was that, plastic. System thinking emphasizes continuous living. You cannot stop and say, moi oui vais. So, moi ça assise, moi ça debout, moi ça couché. Develop a management plan for each apiary with a robust monitoring section, which also covers security issues. By apiary, the last thing is mauvais. There is a security issues. There are security issues. How can we address them? And I am promoting for you, if you use that concentric model, you can determine how effective your security systems can be. Perhaps you can have varying levels of security. The experts always tell you, if you build a house, never have one security system. Think of it. First of all, you put up your fence. Second of all, you have your dogs. Third of all, you put your rod iron. Fourth of all, you put an alarm system. Fifth of all, it's connected to guardsmen or sentinel or police. Sixth of all, somebody said it.
You put your gun.
Huh? They won't watch it. If you, maybe seven of all, you have your gun. Okay? So the point I'm saying, if you're going to use that principle, when you have your apiaries, no. think, again, ask Richard about that. What technology can you use in the buffer zones? So let's say book like having which I have, which I wear you. Also cell phone, no. Because I have Kim volley. These days with technology, anything is possible. And because we have connection with Microsoft now, sensors can be put anywhere. Ask Richard, Richard is the expert in that. So robust monitoring section for that. Another thing is integrating science, which also brings research and innovation into your agriculture system. Please, please do not stop and say you have arrived. Research is improving all the time. Please read, please Google, please go to the websites, go to our websites, go to the ISC websites, go to the Caribbean Beekeepers website, go to the ICA website, go to the FAO websites. You cannot stop. If you're a systems thinker, you are forever reading. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stop here and thank you for your attention. Okay. Questions before I sit? Any comments? My brother, yes. Can you sprint across, my brother? We're giving you an exercise today. Copies of these presentations will be sent to you by email, so don't worry. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Good morning once again. Just a simple observation. Subject to correction. In one of your slides, I noticed you have the negative feedback and the positive feedback.
Right.
But just in relation to me,
it's counterintuitive.
Yes, to me it should be the other way around.
The other way around.
Because
you see,
yeah, go ahead.
if you introduce a variable, it is going in one direction.
Mm-hmm.
If it continues, it will kill you. You have to stop it and turn it around, so you can go back to where it started and created the equilibrium that's needed for survival.
But the
If it
negative,
continues, hold on, that's negative feedback.
yeah.
Because the negative is in some way preventing that continuous flow, that continuous movement in one direction.
Okay.
Positive is moving in one direction, and it eventually kill you. Your temperature is increasing, so it increases by the time it reaches 105 Ujamo.
All right.
If your temperature is increasing, when it reaches 101, you take measures, they give you IV, they put you in a cold bath, it begins to turn around and come back to the balance.
Okay.
So negative prevents the positive direction from positive. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Yeah?
Yes, because I was thinking that the
Because
positive
you are socialized to be
feedback
the
would bring you
positive zone.
bring you back to health, not a negative feedback.
No, the negative,
In my mind, the negative feedback would lead to doom and destruction, but a positive feedback would be, yeah. But anyhow,
in science,
it's
negative
differently.
feedback is what you want. If you have positive, if I say, Richard has gone to positive feedback, that means he's ammo. He's dead.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Yes? Oh, Dr. Melvin. Just not John.
Good morning.
Yes.
Actually, I really want to commend you on the presentation, especially as it pertains to the buffer zones and the management planning and so on, these sort of things. That's very important, especially for us as a vet division and our role in terms of disease monitoring and so on. That is very, very, very important. And so it would help us as a ministry, as a department, to do our work even better if farmers all had that kind of mapping of their farms. Can you imagine if there's a disease, an introduction of a foreign disease? We can quickly come in and we can put in those buffer zones to prevent the spread. So that is very, very important. This is the sort of mappings we use for disease surveillance, for controlling disease outbreaks and so on. Very, very important. So if you as a farmer have that sort of mapping and you know how far your bees go, can you imagine if your hive has a new disease that's not in St. Lucia, and your bees can transmit and spread. So we know how far those bees can go. And we can put in the necessary measures. So this is very important. And your management plans. So I just wanted to commend you on that. And if farmers can take those initiatives, begin to do their planning, we can work along with you and do those sort of things. It will make our job even easier in terms of controlling and disease spread. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. One of the things that I haven't I really have to talk to you, Brent, but I'm going to say one of the things for this to make it effective is also using a drone to get aerial views of the 3-mile radius. If we could get maybe in the next project, buy a drone that could be used to monitor. So when you go there, the drone can go vertical to about, 500-600 feet? I don't know, Richard, 700 feet? And you can see and you can observe what's happening. That is something we have to start to use technology. But Richard will talk about more technology than I. Somebody else? Yes. Yeah, John. Go to the mic, John. John belongs to the Horizon Brothers. They're about to open up a processing plant in Grace.
Yes. Concerning on the aspect of predator larceny.
Yes.
With my experience in both past and present, what we have noticed as beekeepers, we interact with people. And to my experience, I can give you just a short point to that. So probably bringing the law now to predator larceny. Because for instance, if there is a close by person, I would say, and interested in seeing the activity you're doing in beekeeping, and he's giving you a help, you'll not find she. Sorry about that, but she does participate. But you'll find a he. And in that certain part, he learning a bit of knowledge from what he sees you doing. And from the time you would promise him a hive, that would be part of his concern. So you find at time the progress the person see you doing in the beekeeping, sometimes it causes predator larceny.
Oh, okay. So people who you try to help,
yes,
they become jealous of your progress, and therefore they might steal from you too.
Yes, because the person might see the progress you're doing, and actually sometimes some of our beekeepers promise. Because if I tell a gentleman of mine, I promise him a hive, and he's seen 2 years down the line, the amount of honey I progress in my activity or work, and I say in 2 years I promise you a hive. That is a bad practice.
Thank you.
And we have to be very careful in that. I will not point fingers, but I've gone through a wide experience all over in St. Lucia. Burning of hives, invading hives, going into your hives. So in science and technology, I would improve that. But it has to play a fair game in predator larceny.
Very important
yes,
point.
thank you.
In fact, it might be very useful for the ministry to take a look at the predator larceny sections of legislation to see if it requires improvement. And if there is need to rewrite sections to improve it, let us know, we can talk. Because that's important. If we're going to grow the apiculture industry and predator larceny becomes an encumbrance to it, we have a problem. I'm just saying to look at it. Okay? Yes, ma'am? Okay, 2 people and we're going to stop. Okay, 2 people and we stop. And Richard, please get ready.
Good afternoon. It's good to know that the females are not thieves in apiculture. So that's a plus for women in agriculture. But on a serious note, that brings back to registration of farms and our land bank issues. I'm going to speak on them on a different level. Registration. You come to an officer and you tell them, I had 2 hives there. You know, farm apiaries move. Sometimes you shift in one zone, you may not own the land, which is a problem with land ownership, or it may not be in a particular zone. We could tell you that's a residential area, or we have noticed there's a lot of predator larceny. That's why you have extension officers. Sometimes we do things isolated, and then we expect the ministry to come and assist you, not knowing history. Sometimes somebody might come and say they had 2 goats and somebody steal it, not knowing they had steal it already from somebody else. But when you are a registered farmer, recognized by the ministry, and we interacting, when predator larceny calls us to assist them with information, we can give the information. And the land bank issue, we as agriculturists need to advocate, need to put our foot down for our government to see the need to have proper land facilitation for farmers, not only ourselves as apiculture, because a lot of the agricultural zones are going into commercial, residential, and people don't respect farmers. You may have been there for 20 years, you have your hives there for 40 years, your grandfather had it there, somebody come there, they just see the bees, they're allergic to it. They have never gotten stung, and they will tell you to leave your place and put, just to accommodate somebody that has been there for 2 days. We need to put our foot down, and I think new changes, new year, everything, we need to come together. Farmers like to segregate, like the tables, but that's not working. We need to come together.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you
All
very
right.
much for that. Marcus, yeah? Okay. We have somebody else. Oh, he was there before. Go. Marcus will be the last person. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to lend to, because that's what I was leading to, the land use policies we don't have.
Yeah.
We've been speaking about this for years and years and years, but there seems to be no action. I mean, you're asking me to invest thousands of dollars into a venture. Today, it's okay. Tomorrow, by the stroke of a pen, the same thing you say, your neighbor's property now becomes residential. You've been there for years established, either the smell or the bees or something, and right away you are evicted or your livelihood is cut short. We need policies that could, when I go to the bank, I know, or when I invest that kind of money, especially if you're going to retire, if you're looking for retirement, when you invest that kind of money, you're assured that, say, 5, 10 years going down the line, you don't expect it to be next day, because that's what's happening now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those persons from the Ministry of Agriculture sit on DCA boards. They sit on their hair when the agricultural lands are being cut up and thrown all about the place, and nothing's happening. Yeah. But I'm happy that we farmers now have to stand for what we believe. Because, yes, apiculture, you want it to work, but where is the guarantee to say that if I put my investment in a particular area, that at least for 10 years or 5, 10 years, I am guaranteed that somebody else is not going to come, or residential or something, that will tell me I'm evicted.
Okay, thank you for that. I have to cut to that. That's a good point we'll discuss this afternoon during the discussion phase, the challenges of land use. I know 2 consultants worked on a national land use policy that was submitted to the Ministry of Planning. I'm not sure where it went to. The last person, Marcus, quickly. Who you guys?
Yeah, I was saying another systems theory.
Right.
With regards to mapping your apiary.
Yeah.
Everyone who is located within that area,
Right.
I mean between your core and the buffer zone.
The outer buffer.
Yeah, I figure out everyone plays an integral role in terms of management of your
Now
hives.
you understand it, yes.
Okay, so we need a proactive educational program.
There you go.
You know, with regards to beekeeping and linked to the environment, because there are various benefits which people who live in the area are not aware of.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, you have the farmers who may have a plot of land next to your apiary, and they are using pesticides.
Good. I have to cut you here because of time.
Yeah.
I know where you're going with that. Let's bring it back again, discussion this afternoon. Important. So, Mark, your point is taken. It will be repeated again, and you'll have an opportunity to talk about it. So, I haven't said my brother. I'm sorry, but we have to stop now. The point I'm making is this concentric circle thing is about funding as well. It's about funding as well. When you go to funders like us or to ICA, and you say, Gasa, I only have 20 by 40. They're making sense. They're making sense. You design a project for the 3-mile radius. You get my point? And then that's why Mark thing about education comes in. So if Lucia's luxury is in buffer zone 2, and Brent, my friend there, is in, you have to bring everybody together to talk. Because if not, Brent will build a blue factory, Lucia's bringing a ram factory, that one will do another thing there. Problem. So I hope you all get what we're trying to get to, and so on. More discussions later. Richard, you have the floor. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Good to see good turnout of beekeepers. I'm happy to see you all very much here. I'm going to try to be very short and sweet to the point. I will not take too much of your time. I will not take up too much of your time, and I'll try to keep it very short and sweet, as I said. We're here to talk about modern techniques in apiculture. I'm going to touch on 4 subjects briefly: hive monitoring, selective breeding, pollen studies, and I will touch very briefly on prairie larceny. There's not much I can really tell you on that, but I'll do my best to. Okay, so hive monitoring. With the assistance of Jeff SGP, the ISC is pioneering hive monitoring in the Caribbean. Hive monitors help to evaluate optimal hive conditions using 4 basic characteristics: brood temperature, hive humidity, weight, and acoustics. And from this, you can plot statistical analysis and trends and correlations. So if we're looking back at what Mr. Romulus was suggesting with his basic systems theory analysis of apiculture, one of the things you need to look at is, okay, so the core, your hive, that's where it all starts, that's where it's all happening. So how do we intuitively know what's happening inside the core or the hive without actually opening it or knowing if there is a problem prior to you getting to the hive to take corrective action, or to, to provide negative feedback to abate the positive feedback overtaking. All right, so anybody here could tell me what's the average temperature of a bee colony? What should be the average temperature? Anybody got an idea? Anybody? What do you think it should be? I know you know the answer, Jake, but you could give the answer if you want. What do you think the average temperature, or what's the range, the temperature range a beehive should be? What do you think in degrees Celsius? 86 degrees Fahrenheit, that's pretty close, yeah? It's somewhere in that range. I know it in Celsius. Because of time, I'll give you the answer. A colony of bees should be somewhere between 32 degrees Celsius and 37 degrees Celsius. So I know. Oh, great, fantastic, you're a genius. All right, so this is the temperature range you want your bees to be at. So if you can sit down, if you've got bees in Vieux Fort or somewhere in Kappa State or somewhere along the eastern seaboard, and you're sitting down in Castries and you notice that your bees are somewhere in the 28 degrees Celsius range, it means that something is definitely wrong and you need to go and check it out. So you'll be using technology to give you information. You could also get information to exactly what's happening in your colony of bees by adding weights to your hive in your hive monitoring system. So your hive monitoring system could tell you, oh, my colony of bees has increased by 10 pounds today. That means there's a honey flow going on. So that means all the bees that I have in that particular apiary are also gaining weight as well. So rather than me going down to that particular location without having any equipment or enough resources with me to deal with all of my bees, I may go down there, check it out. Oh, shucks, I don't have enough frames. I don't have enough wax. I don't have enough boxes. I could intuitively know before I get there that I need to have all these things with me, and I can make proper preparation and save time and be more effective. So incorporating hive monitors into your system is quite an interesting theory, and it allows you to be more proactive, not to waste time. Another aspect in systems theory, which if you apply it, is that we I've been doing work in developing a Hive app. So we have an app that will work on your Android phone. I have an app on an Android phone, and you are able to record your data, record in your inspections, record anomalies, things that you may see happening today and you're not sure about. You can snap it, make a note inside of the Hive app as to particularly what's going on. And when you go back, you go back, it's there, reminds you, and you can follow up on the observation. So you really need to start moving in that direction. So as we've said already, we've already covered this already, so I'll just skip this. So when you're looking at the Hive app has a couple of main areas of focus: your examination and inspections, your disease treatments and any pests you may observe, honey harvesting, feeding and nutrition, if you need to replace the queens, and if you need to reset the colony. So using the Hive app on your phone, it allows you to also collect terrestrial data, what's in bloom in the area. So as Mr. Romulus spoke about, that 3-mile radius of what's happening. If you can start capturing the data and logging it into your phone, a year from now you could say, well, did the cashew tree flower at the same time? Or is a cashew tree flowering at a different time in the year? And over time, as long as you keep on collecting this information, all this data collected together can be a very powerful tool for you as a beekeeper, because you can say, well, this particular area, this particular apiary I have, this is what's been happening. Is it getting any better or is it getting any worse? Because I've got the data there to prove it. Or I may see the results in another apiary. I may have data on another apiary which I have, and everything is doing fantastically there. I might swift my bees across from one location to another, capture all that, help those bees to capture all that nectar, and when the flow is over, shift my bees back to their original location. So you can now start to make smarter decisions based upon the information that you're capturing out there. And you're not just going to be, well, I've got my apiary here, the bees are doing fine, okay, there's a bit of a dearth going on, but if I was to go down the road or bring them about 10 miles down the road where there's an active flow going on, I could capture that honey and get more dollars at the end of the month. So we need to start to be more, look at becoming migratory beekeepers and not just staying in one place. We need to move our bees around to follow the flow, because the flow doesn't stay one place in St. Lucia. There may be a flow in the north of the island and your bees are in the south and you're not capturing any of that nectar flow. So if you have access to resources and land where you can move your bees to, move them there, collect the nectar, and then bring them back to home base afterwards. So we start to need to be more proactive. And if we capture, using the Hive app, the information of what's happening around you, it will allow you to better respond to what's going on in your environment. Selective breeding. Selective breeding is an important part of some of the things that we've done in the last few years in St. Lucia. You can breed your bees to enhance behavioral traits. So if you notice you've got a colony of bees that is very tender, very gentle to work with, and you like working with a colony of bees, why not replicate it? It's a very easy process through queen rearing. All right. If you find that you've got a colony of bees that is specifically resistant to varroa mites, you find that you give one treatment and they respond very well, and that colony of bees keeps the mite population down very low after one treatment, you might want to replicate that colony. You do that through selective breeding. Breeding to increase production. If you've got a colony, you find colonies of bees in your apiary that have characteristics that they produce huge amounts of honey. They go after the honey, they produce huge, and they keep on going, and they don't want to swarm, and they just keep on giving you the honey. You want to capture that trait and replicate it. So if you can find bees that have all the traits that you're looking for, and you replicate them, it's better for you. And you don't. So if you find there are traits that you observe that you don't like, you may have a very defensive bee or a very defensive colony of bees that's not really looking after you, that's not producing the honey you want. Why would you keep that queen? It doesn't make sense. So replace it with something that gives you what you want. So there are different things you need to look at, and you should really look at having a selective breeding program, looking at your bees or the colonies of bees that you have, and documenting their performance and recording it using the Hive app, which will help you to do this. And then you can make choices on the best bees for you to work with from your colonies. All right, anybody have any questions? Yes, Cynthia? Yes?
Use the mic.
Use the microphone. It's your moment. It's your moment to be a star.
Sorry, you were saying if you have a non-productive colony, would just changing the queen only make a difference?
Yes, it can potentially do that.
Just the queen, not the entire?
No, because remember, the queen is what drives the colony. She's the one that produces the eggs. All right, so if you've got a queen that's producing a lot of eggs, it will produce a lot of workers, and the workers in turn will do a lot of work. But if you've got a queen that's only producing a few eggs, producing very few workers, the results are going to be, it will be reflective. So the feudancy of your queen, her productivity, her vigor, is what you're looking for. And you want her to transfer that vigor, that excitement, that desire, the drive to collect the nectar, to produce eggs. That's what you're looking for. All right? So I'll move on. Any more questions? Nobody? Yes?
You said moving the bees, migratory beekeeping.
Yes.
Did you put a cost? Because definitely you would have to have a cost. You say if in the south not doing good, and you see it's in the north. Did you put a cost on transportation?
You would have to have your own vehicle. One would assume that you have your own vehicle, and one would assume that you're moving your bees. But there must be a cost to it, yeah.
Yeah,
there would be a cost, but I think the reward should outweigh the cost of a full tank of gas.
Yes.
And your time. So the cost should outweigh, as long as you've got the infrastructure over time. If you've got say for instance, you're in View Fort Grace, and somebody tells you that there's a good honey flow happening in Morshe, and they've got land that's available that you could use free of charge. All right? You put a full tank of gas, you load up your bees in the back of your pickup, you drive it to Morshe, you set up, you leave it there for a month or two, you get back the returns, it was good, bring them back down to View Fort once the flow is over.
Yeah, but you still have to do an evaluation cost to that.
Yes, you should, but I think the benefits should outweigh the cost. I mean, you wouldn't do it unless it was viable.
But that's judging, like you said, judging on the foresight to give you.
Yeah, so maybe you want to move 1 or 2 hives, check it out. If it works for you, then you can move and you could bring more.
Okay.
All right, but you need to evaluate the process, Mr. Dennis.
Yeah, I really talk about movement from hives and capture and take the flow. I can speak loud now. Everybody hear me, right?
Yes, we need it for the recordings.
Okay. I heard you spoke about moving of hives to capture the honey flow. From my experience, and I mean most of the farmers' experience, the nectar in St. Lucia, they flow at the same time. When they go in south, it may start a week or 2 weeks earlier, but they flow at the same time. When you move hives, the time it takes for it to reorganize itself, then to collect nectar, it doesn't move it. I mean, in big countries where you have different temperatures and different things, you find these things happening. But St. Lucia, it might be very, very difficult to capture nectar flow in one area and then move to the next area to capture the next flow. It's very, very difficult. That's my input on that aspect.
That's good. I mean, but we have different experiences. Any more questions?
Yes. I mean, it's on the presentation. I have a question. I mean, selective breeding.
Yeah. I have been heard people saying about they don't like to work with those bees that look really aggressive. As soon as you reach to the hive, they kind of rush in and do this. How would you look at those bees which is so aggressive and those that more calm and dormant in producing?
Well, you got, from what I've seen and the research I've done so far for myself and what I've looked through from papers I've looked at, we have basically two species of bees in St. Lucia. You have the Apis mellifera, the western honeybee, and you also have Apis sculetta, which is the Africanized bees. And you've got the hybrid between the two, because the two species are mixing and mating together. The traits of the Africanized bees, where they're more prone to swarming, and they're not going to stay put for once the hive, they've got a very strong honey stores, they are prone to swarming, the higher tendency to swarm. Whereas your Italian and your Apis mellifera lines are going to be a little more calmer, and they will not be so much prone to swarming. But it's all about the experience that you like to enjoy. If you like working with, defensive bees, it's fine. But if you work with more gentle bees, you might enjoy the experience a little more.
So do we have the Cocosian bees and the Italian bees mix of breed in here in Lucia?
Yes.
How do you look at these two in working towards as they cross?
The crosses bring different results. Some will pull to one direction and some will pull to a different direction. It's for you as a beekeeper to keep on breeding to find what you want, what you like to work with, what's giving you the best results, to take notes, to jot down information, and keep on looking for what's best for you.
So do you observe the aggressive bees and those that more calm and dormant is more resistible for the veromite?
I would say that the more defensive bees, or the bees that are closer to the Africanized strain, do perform a little better with the veromite. But then I found more gentle breeds that have adapted and have very good hygienic behavior, and also you'll find that they will go after the veromite as well. But it's up to you as a beekeeper in your management practices to carefully monitor the veromite levels and to maintain them below 1 to 2 mites per 100 bees. I think that's what you really got to look at if you're looking at veromite control. What's your management practices in monitoring how much mite is in your hive? And are you monitoring the right times of the year? How many mites are there? So if you're monitoring, you say, okay, there's 10 mites per 100, that means you've got a big problem and you need to treat your bees. If you just leave it and you don't treat it, then you're going to find that regardless of if you've got a defensive bee or a calm bee, the problem exists and they may swarm on you or the hive will die. So you really need to address that problem. All right? Mr. Dennis.
Question. In terms of, you spoke about the hive monitor.
Yeah.
But we have to look at the practicality of the hive monitor in terms for a farmer. For research purposes, I can say yes. But we have to look at the cost of the hive monitor. Can you give me the figure of what of the size, how much it costs?
Sure. Okay, so the Hive app itself.
The monitor.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting to it. All right, so the Hive app is a free app. Okay. We give that away. That's away free. You could download it. Mm-hmm. And what we are doing now, we're working with our Indian counterparts to develop our own Hive monitoring system. So what we're working on now is that you should be able to get your own hive monitoring system for under $150 US, as opposed to paying 200 plus, 300 plus.
No. You showed a hive monitor.
Yes, I'm just telling you what we're using now. Okay, let's go back. The system we're using here now is quite costly, and it'll be you wouldn't want to have that in every single box. You may want to have it if you can, and if you've got apiaries that are 40 plus, I would suggest you put one master, which has got weights and scales and everything, and maybe 2 other hives just to back up, to compare the data. But I wouldn't suggest you put you could invest, if you got 40 hives in an apiary, that should have a strong enough turnover you to invest in the system.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but sometimes, as you know, different hives have different temperaments, different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes the hive you may put it on might not give you a true picture.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hive you put it on might be overrated.
Yeah.
All right, but I was looking at the cost.
But we're working on bringing down the costs, and we're working with an Indian company called Leopardtech, and we're looking to bring it right down, so you could have a system with the scales and everything for $150 US, maybe even under $100. And we were looking to, if we can bring the component parts to St. Lucia and do the assembly here, the price could even be even lower. So this is what we're working on currently.
All right. I mean, okay. In terms of the breed selection.
Yes.
I mean, for a while I've been hearing you talking about breed selection. I mean, I work in the Ministry of Agriculture Veterinary Division, and I believe we have requested information from you in terms of, your experiment. But I feel that have never forthcoming. They haven't been forthcoming. The question to you now is that, I mean, you have been speaking a lot about you have created that breed that, sometimes you talk about high productivity, you talk about possibility of viral resistance and other traits. The question to you is that, I mean, in terms of what you did, when you average our production as what we have exists presently, what most farmers do, and what you do, can you give me the differences in terms of what you see in terms of production?
Sure. Yeah. We've been doing currently we're undertaking a regional survey. So we have data from across the region, not just St. Lucia. The average right across the region right now is probably somewhere between 3 to 4 gallons per hive. That's the regional average from across, that's not just St. Lucia. If I look at the results that we get from beekeepers across the region, from colonies that we're working with, we're getting like 5 to 6 gallons. That's what we're looking at. And
I mean, can you furnish us with some of the data, especially when it came to the breed selection and these things? I mean, it has been 2 years we've been asking for that, but to no avail. So,
we're looking to work with the department. I've spoken to Dr. Melville, and we're looking to work with the department.
Yeah, because I mean, without information, there's very little as extension officers we can do.
Sure. Sure.
And I mean, although I go out in the fields, and from the information I'm getting is anyway. Yeah. I mean, basically that's it for now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dennis. So let's move on. Anybody more questions on selective breeding? Jake, anything? Mr. Brent, Theophil? No, we're good? All right, so we'll move on. We've done a lot of work. We've given away a lot of queens in the last 2 years, and we'll probably try to give away more. It's been a difficult year this year with the hurricane, and we have a lot of projects going on, but maybe next year we'll do more in that respects. Pollen studies. Pollen studies are important because they tell us, yes, ma'am?
Oh, just a quick question. In terms of the queen
yes.
wearing activities, in terms of your data and your response,
for recording purposes.
Oh, sorry. The results. You seem to be organized in terms of your data and so on. So, in terms of the queens, the productivity of the queens, do you have data on that so you can see whether how productive they are, how
yes,
they are doing,
and
so on? Can you share that with us as well?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And who they were distributed to and all of that, so we can.
Yeah. All right. Pollen studies are important because they tell us what our bees are feeding on. Pollen is an important source of proteins and amino acids for the bees. Studies in pollen are important in terms of understanding bee nutrition. So, as we spoke with Mr. Romulus, he spoke about planting trees, the importance of planting trees, and the importance of knowing what's happening in your 3 to 4 mile radius around your bees. By having this information and looking at what pollen your bees are bringing back to the hive, it will directly tell you what trees and plants your bees are interacting with. All right, so so as I've just said, pollen studies can also identify the origin or region, thereby allow definition of real or fake honey. Yes, Mr. Theophilo.
Thanks, Richard. Just a quick point on the pollen matter.
Yes.
The Bee City project did some sampling across the country and has some lead analysis on pollen in terms of the visitation by the bees and what was present in the honey. I think altogether, from what I remember, there were 17 species that the bees primarily focused on, and the ones that factored in most heavily in the profile was a short list of about 7 in terms of 15+% percentile representation in the honey. So they have some really good lead work that can factor into what you're doing here. So we can actively say, we know for a fact that bees across the country go after these 6-7 species a lot. We should actively plant those and encourage them.
Exactly, and then thus forth, you can actually plant more of these trees, more of these plants to get more production. And also, for instance, there's a lot of debate happening in the Caribbean about the free movement of honey between Caribbean territories. And one of the questions is, well, how do we know the honey came from this specific place? But you can identify that through the pollen analysis that honey came from this specific place. So a guy can't go and import a bunch of honey from Canada, bring it into maybe one of our neighboring islands, repackage it as honey from that island and trying to sell it in St. Lucia. Where's the pollen analysis? Does it stand up to it? All right, so these are different things that we need to have a handle on to exactly know what our vegetation is and what's happening within our borders, and how these things what's flowering at different periods of time during the different pollen analysis. So the pollen analysis will tell us, well, if it's January, February, March, April, this was what was in bloom at this specific point in time. If we're looking at a different time stamp, April, August, September, or July, August, September, the pollen analysis will tell us exactly what was in bloom at that time, not anecdotally us looking at a tree and say, well, I saw the coconut tree had some flowers on it, or I saw this tree had some flowers on it. So maybe doing the pollen analysis will tell you exactly what was happening at a specific point in time. So this helps us to know what vegetation that we need to plant, and also helps us to know exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Just to reinforce, in reference again to the BCT project, we're trying to increase the marketability of our honey if we want to access other markets. So to identify and say, this is St. Lucia honey, and St. Lucia honey has this characteristics, it has this components, and so kind of profile our honey even better.
Correct. So
I'm happy for the work that's being done, and perhaps also as we move forward, more study, more research in that area to concrete this information, and to have it a scientific back study to say this is the profile, and we can also build upon that in terms of the forages and the things that we were saying. I don't like to repeat what people have already said, but the point is to increase marketability of our honey.
Yeah. And one good thing we will also have to remember, St. Lucia is 238 square miles. So anything that comes off 238 square miles that has good medicinal properties is very special and should be marketable. Last but not least, predial larceny. Beekeepers need to improvise and incorporate modern low-cost security systems in the apiaries. This is essential, as overall objective should be to increase the number of productive hives you have in the field. There are some options. The cheaper one is the bottom camera, is a trail camera. You can pick these up for $35 to $40 US, and you can strategically place them around your apiary, the roads leading to your apiaries, directly leading to your apiary, on your apiary site. So you can have pictures taken. So anytime you go to your apiary, you can review the film and say, okay, well, nothing happened, and you could delete it. Or you can say, look, Joe Blow was there from card number TX blah, 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 blah. And when you go to your hives, you say, oh, all my honey's missing. And then you might see pictures of Joe Blow actually taking your honey. So this is an easy, low-cost, improvised way. There are more expensive versions. So you can have cameras that are collected with a GSM chip, which have their own little solar panel powering it, and you can point and click and tilt them remotely from your cell phone. And these only go for about $160. But if you've got 40 or 50 hives in a field, which is probably the equivalent to $50,000 or $60,000, investing $160 to buy a camera to secure them so that you can have that peace of mind is not a very big investment opportunity. So I think these are things that we need to look at as beekeepers to help protect ourselves from prey larceny. Not everybody has the fortune to have somebody looking over the hives to them all the time. And the more you try to produce more honey, you will find yourself placing your colonies in more remote areas, where larger colonies of bees in more remote areas where no one is around. And you need to have some kind of provisional security to help you. All right, any questions? Nope. Yes, sir.
I know you're into breeding queens, yes. But what is your take on allowing the hive to naturally swarm?
Well, I mean, if you allow your colony of bees to naturally swarm, you're going to lose a quantity of your bees. So first, you're going to lose a part of your workforce. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is it's going to take at least a month before you have a functioning queen in your colony.
But if you specifically set up a hive that you allow that specific hive to just breed queens and swarm naturally, so that is just out in the open. Because I know you're into the breeding of queens.
Well, if you want to change the genetics, or you're trying to just have lots of colonies around, which have a specific characteristic, yeah, that's fine.
But would you grade that as a good practice?
No, because you're losing you're a potential producer for you.
No, but you again, yes, I know you're into all the science of strains and everything, but then you have a natural queen with nothing that has been...
That's fine. Yeah. But all I'm saying to you is that if you allow your colony of bees to swarm, she's going to leave with half the workers, so you've just depleted the strength of that colony by 50%. And then it's going to take a month for her to get back, for that colony to start to go back into production mode. So you may have lost the honey flow during that period. There's nothing wrong with doing that if that's what you want to do. But if you look at it from a time perspective, you just lost half the bees of that colony. They've gone somewhere else in the wild. Yes, you may have got a great new queen that's going to produce for you, but it's going to take you maybe 30 days or at least a month before she's going to get into full production. The reason why I asked you that, there's a gentleman, myself and him, we work together.
Right. And he, from the age of 8 years, right, his dad brought him into the whole rearing of bees. And he is a strong advocate in allowing at least one of your hives just to swarm naturally. If all of these things that's going on right now, the global warming and everything, all the different interference, science has its place in everything, but he strongly believes that beekeepers, especially in St. Lucia, need to allocate at least one hive a year and allow it to swarm, that those queens will go out there naturally and do the thing naturally and continue breeding and continue swarming, because we have a very, right now the bees on islands is at a very low level. Before you used to get hives everywhere. Now it's very rare.
But there's more beekeepers.
We don't have enough beekeepers.
But you have more. But you have. So let's look at another question. What is the carrying capacity of the forage that's available? So is it that we've increased the number of bees, but from human intervention, you're reducing the amount of forage because our population, we're building houses in new areas, we're deforesting areas. So what we have to look at is what is the ratio of the carrying capacity of the natural forage we have vis-a-vis the number of colony of bees out there.
But it almost balances out, because if I continue buying queens from you, let's say if I buy 100 queens before the end of this year, that's 100 hives I have. Right. But then if I let nature take its course in terms of having those queens untainted, interfere with, have a natural queen out there, and probably some of our bee men can actually go back and catch some of these, put them back into the boxes, and allow, from my indoctrination from the gentleman, I believe beekeepers need to at least have one box every year that the natural system can continue. That's what I believe.
I think everybody normally has a colony of bees that you miss. So you always miss 1 or 2 hives in the natural order of your production year. You're not going to be perfect and save to catch all the swarms or stop all the possible swarms that occur. But what you can look at is that I'm being told time. Okay, what you can possibly look at is how best to manage that, because you don't want to lose too many. You don't want to lose bees. You want to keep bees. All right. So, okay, Mr. Prosper's last question, Mr. Prosper.
Sorry, it's not a question. Hi. Good
Comment.
Morning. Comment, questions, observations. Quickly. Thanks, Giles, for introducing the systems theory into beekeeping. I think it's quite important because, well, let me just give a brief introduction. I'm Kurt. I was the project coordinator under the JCCP where we did the beehive monitoring, right? First of all, I think it's very important for data. And the output from the monitors and whatnot gives it data. We have to translate that data into information. Information that is useful to the beekeeper, right? So that's the first observation. The second one, while you're on this slide, right? We have high-tech forms of technology. We also have low-tech forms of technology. We don't necessarily need a thermometer inside the hive to monitor the temperature. There are different ways, there are different technologies where you could still get that same useful information to then feed to the beekeeper or to allow the beekeeper to make certain decisions, right? We do not need humidity sensors, whatnot. It speaks to a certain segment of persons who could take that data and translate it and make it useful to the beekeepers or persons who would use it. In systems theory, right, we're talking about keeping bees in a box, right? There are certain factors. If we look at the system where you use your landscape, right, and then you have 3 miles, a distance away from your box, that's external factors. But you could look at your system also as the box itself. There are factors which you control or which inside the box you have influence on. But these also affect your output. If you're looking for example, honey, right? There are certain factors which we manipulate that we expect will give a certain result. We need data. And we need to treat data differently. How we collect data, how we use that data to inform us. Because I've started several workshops, etc., and everyone comes with their personal experience and what they practice, right? We just heard the gentleman say he's convinced in letting one of your hives swarm, right? He's indoctrinated in that. Certain people are against, and they will tell you, boy, from my experience, you have to try and prevent a hive from swarming. If a hive wants to swarm, it will swarm. You could change everything inside the box. Once the bees decide they're going to swarm, they're going to swarm, right? Richard has advocated for queen rearing, trying to control that component, which is the queen and the characteristics you want. Everything fits in. And my challenge to Marcus as the extension officer, Richard, everyone in here, even the upcoming beekeepers, right? We still use the Langstroth hive, right? Some beekeepers swear by a 10 frame hive. Some swear by an 8 frame. Some swear by a double deep. some swear by everything, right? How am I, as a beekeeper who is new, when you tell me the best thing to go and buy is a 10-frame box deep? Then you say, okay, do I put shallows? Do I put a next deep and top, whatnot? And then everything gets muddled up. Do I use plastic foundation? Do I use full foundation? Do I use starter strip? Do I use, and everybody tell you, I'm sure from the experienced beekeepers there, Marcus has been where I keep hives, and I just do nonsense, right? But it's to try to learn and see what works within our environment. The Langstroth hive was not created in the Caribbean, right? It may have worked, it may have been what we have adopted, but again, the need for data. If we could get proper data, right? Where it could just be a particular type of hive that may or appears to work better here, but we need that data for us to make that decision. And I think we need to change, and again, it's very important that we started off with the systems approach. We need to change and collect the data and not only think of one component. There's a micro component. It could just be inside the box. It could be in your environment. You could have the perfect conditions in your box, and your environment doesn't allow you to produce honey, if it's honey you want to produce. Okay. It could be wax.
All right.
Right? It could be a nook you want to sell.
This is stuff that, as Mr. Romulus has just indicated, that we want to do at the Arley Institute, and that's what the Arley Institute is being created to answer these questions. So great point, Mr. Prosper. Sorry to cut you off, but I think Mr. Romulus is coming on board. But great point. Thanks everybody for the time.
Thank you, colleagues. The point here is technology is not static. Technology is changing. And the next point is that traditional methods may be as efficacious as new methods. But unless we do the research and we can say definitively this is better than that, we're still in a zone of doubt. And that's why the Research Institute is going to be important for St. Lucia. So thank you for your attention. I'm going to push you for at least one more presentation before we go to lunch. So I'm going to ask Mr. Marcus to come up and do his presentation. You have a presentation? Yes. Okay, is there? Okay. No. Come here, man. Marcus, I don't know. I don't see Marcus.
I have it now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good day to all. Marcus Dennis from the Ministry representing the Livestock Service Division. So today I'll be talking to you about bees and bee diseases, basically. Yeah. Yeah. 1, 2. All right. Sorry. The role of the Livestock Service Division. All right. Well, as most farmers know, we in the Livestock Division are the authorities to assist in the development of the industry. So we do things like extension services to farmers. In terms of, we look at things like if people bring in honey and hive products, what are allowed, what's not supposed to come in. In terms of policies and regulations, we also are part of putting these things forward for the interests of the apiculture sector. So basically, that's what we do in a nutshell. I don't know if my boss wants to elaborate a little more, but that's what it. Okay. So today we'll be talking about disease management. And I mean, although I have to rush through the slide, but okay, before we can talk about diseases, you have to be able to know, to identify what's a disease. And you have to be able to identify what is normal against what is abnormal. Because you cannot make no decision on any disease if you don't know what's normal. So we'll just go through some normal aspects of, things. In order to, you must be able to identify the pest and disease, as we said. You need a regular inspection of the brood box. Usually we recommend thoroughly before and after the nectar flow. Although you'll be doing inspections throughout as the nectar flow is there. But a thorough inspection before to know your situation and after to know your situation. We look at, we said spot checks, 3 or 4 combs during nectar flow. So during nectar flow, just spot checking to see what's going on. Respond appropriately to the disease when found. So if you get a hive that is dead, what should you do? Close and move it, take it out from the apiary. Because if you don't know the problem. If you realize that you have crawling bees on the ground, it could be a possibility of varroa. Or maybe it could be trachea mites. But then you have to be observant as well. So you prevent the disease from colony to colony. That would present the disease. So it's earlier detection is the quicker you know, and then you can take the appropriate action. Diseases are spread in 2 main ways. 1 by the bee, and 2 by the beekeeper. The way it's spread by bees are the worker bees' behavior by rubbing, because sometimes we see rubbing. I believe, especially this year, to me, the rubbing is even a little greater. Or drifting bees. You may have a number of boxes in the apiary, but bees sometimes move from hive to hive. They may lose orientation and move from hive to hive. Sometimes they may kill them, but usually during nectar flow, they wouldn't kill them because they are bringing something to the hive. By the farmer, is pond management. You transfer infected comb. You strengthen the hive by taking frames from an infected hive and putting it into one that's not infected. That's the way you spread disease. Failure to identify and treat the disease. So if you cannot identify the disease, you can't treat it. Basically. Contamination of beekeeping tools. By right, I believe all beekeepers, especially in that disease world, should maybe have some way to disinfect, especially the hive tool. Usually what I do, I insert my hive tool in my smoker, in the fire. That's the way of disinfection. Some people can have rubbing alcohol and these kind of things. But it's up to you. Nothing is static, is you decide, as long as it's a disinfecting way of doing things. Feeding contaminated honey and pollen. If a hive doesn't have feed, sometimes we take feed from our next hive and give it to others. At that same time, there's a disease frame, we transfer diseases. Okay? Key points in disease management. Deal with the disease quickly. Never leave dead or extremely weak hives in colonies in apiary. Weak colonies in apiary, sorry. Dead colonies should be sealed and moved as soon as possible. As long as you see these things, that's the key to managing the disease. As I said, I wouldn't go through, I don't really want to go through that, but you must be able to identify what's a healthy bee. Like in that one for the egg, normally the egg is, normally lay 1 egg per cell by the queen. So a queen will lay 1 egg in a cell. Suppose you see 2 eggs in a cell. What would you think? Somebody? Maybe you may have a lay worker. If the egg is not at the bottom of the cell, what you might think? Maybe it could also be a lady worker. because the abdominal is not long enough to reach the bottom of the cell. Although sometimes you may have inexperienced queens that may happen. But with time, they will get over that. Okay? As the egg develops, it begins to bend over into a C-shaped larva. So that C-shaped larva should be at the bottom of the cell. So as it develops 3 days after, it moves to a C-shaped larva. A healthy worker queen drone larva is pearly white and glittering in appearance. So, I mean, most of the beekeepers here would know what most beekeepers here would know what it looked like to see a healthy larva. It should be glittering or pearly white in appearance. Okay? They are curled in a C shape at the bottom of the cell. As they continue to grow, eventually filling up the whole cell. That is normal. In terms of the pre-pupa, a healthy developing worker larva are capped, okay? The period just after the cell is capped is called pre-pupa stage. And that stage will just be about maybe 2 or 3 days. During that stage, the larva will stretch outwards, twist, and spin into a cocoon. Twist like and spin into a cocoon. Larva remain pearly white and glycerin. A heavy brood capping pattern is medium brown and in color, convex without punctures. So if you see a healthy brood, a steel brood, it is concave, which is like it's sunken. Usually that brood have a problem. It could be maybe varroa. If you see punctures in the brood as well, it could be a problem. Again, varroa is one of the biggest problems that causes these things. In terms of a healthy pupa breed, pupa stage, sorry. Okay, the healthy pupa remain greatly white during the initial stage of body development into an adult. Compound eyes are the first to change color from white to brownish purple. I sure bet you all have seen that. All right? The rest of the body begins to darken and take the color and features of an adult bee. So now we move on to the actual nitty-gritty. And we're talking about, the first we will talk about is bee parasites. There are 2 main bee parasites. One is the varroa mite and the trachea mite. The other one. Now, I will spend a little time on varroa because varroa is one of the parasites that causes the most economic damage to the beekeeper. So, the native name for varroa mite the scientific name is Varroa destructor. All right? It is native to the eastern honeybee, which is Apis cerana. That's bees that form in Asia and these areas. They migrated to the Apis mellifera and have spread to much of the world. I believe to date, Australia is the only country in the world that doesn't have varroa mite. It was found in St. Lucia in 1998. The mite feed on the hemolymph of the pupa and adult. The hemo means like the blood of the okay? I must say, when the mites came in 98, we had about a little over 4,000 colonies, roughly. And at that time, we were down at the time to about 1,700 colonies in the island. Because that's the devastation effect of varroa when it came in. Okay? I would just like to... What's that? Yeah. Or the body fat. Sorry. Thank you for your correction.
Just want to make one comment. That struck me that Australia is the only. And I have to put in that plug in there. As a veterinarian, I have to put in that plug in there. It struck me that Australia is one of the few countries left that is free of varroa mite. And that may be, in fact, to the strict border control measures Australia has in place. Very, very strict. If you think we're strict, Australia is very, very strict. And so I want to advise us, our bee farmers, biosecurity on your biosecurity in your apiaries is very important, as much as possible, to safeguard the entrance of foreign of diseases and so on. And you can see in 1998, when we first got this mite, when it first entered, the devastation. I'm not sure how it got into the country. I'm not quite sure. Perhaps Marcus can give us some more insight at the time.
We all are not sure,
Mm-hmm.
but I know it came into the country. With the possibility, I mean, you heard so many rumors, like people brought bees from Martinique.
Mm-hmm.
You hear rumors like people come with a queen in their pocket, which I don't believe, because usually these queens, you would have to, you know, if you get it from an expert breeder, you will ensure that they have mites on it. But we know our borders are porous, because we do not have any swamp traps, wrong side, Lucia. Okay? I mean, I have went to the port many times to collect bee swarms. By right, what we should do every time we collect a bee swarm, we shouldn't put it in our general apiary. We should put it somewhere to monitor. I believe the Ministry of Agriculture should look to invest in swarm traps around the island, so that in the event of anything coming in, we can detect it and trap it early. Now I'll just show you a short video about varroa. I mean, so we'll go to a 2-minute video. Now here.
The varroa destructor mite has devastated honeybee colonies wherever it is spread around the world and is a major threat to beekeeping in Australia. While Australia is currently free from varroa, it is likely to enter and become established at some stage in the future. Understanding varroa's life cycle and knowing what to look for will help us to detect it as soon as possible. Help from both hobby and commercial beekeepers is critical to the success of any surveillance activities for varroa. Female varroa mites can enter colonies by people moving equipment between hives, by adult bees carrying the mites between colonies, and by infected bees robbing from healthy colonies. At worst, if action is not taken, there can be hundreds of varroa entering a hive in a day. Once in a hive, the female mite crawls from the adult bee, submerging herself in the larval food at the bottom of the cell. Once the cell is capped, the female mite starts feeding on the developing larvae. The female mite will lay 2 to 5 eggs. The first egg laid is male, and that is followed by female eggs. Once hatched, mites go through 2 juvenile stages before taking on adult form. Males take up to 6 days to develop, while females take 8 days. Mating between mites takes place within the brood cell. Mature female mites leave the brood cell when the adult bee emerges. The female mites feed on the adult bee's hemolymph while being moved around the hive. After 2 weeks, the female mites will leave the adult bee and begin laying eggs in a new cell. A mature female varroa mite can only survive 5 days without an adult honeybee. It takes time for the number of varroa mites to increase in a bee colony. The rate of population growth depends on the number of female mites, their ability to reproduce, and the availability of brood. Even if a colony is only invaded by a few mites each day, they can have a huge effect because of their exponential growth rate. Mite populations will grow faster when brood, especially drone brood, is present all year round. Australia has a healthy bee population, and we want to keep it that way. If you see anything unusual on your bees, call the Exotic Plant Pest Hotline on 1800 084 881. For more information about bee biosecurity, go to the Be Aware website at www.beaware.org.au.
Okay, that was a short thing about varroa mite, or just a short presentation. And as you can see, you'll understand the life cycle of the varroa mite in terms of how it laid eggs in the
National Beekeeping Research and Development Institute in Bucharest, Romania. This time, we will introduce the world of the latest beekeeping research
Okay. I mean, now there are ways and means that the farmer can detect varroa mite. There are a number of ways. But some of the most common ways are IFA roll, a sugar roll, and the drone boot, the inspection of the drone brood. The IFA roll is basically taking a certain number of bees. Usually, you use half cup or 1 cup of bees. I believe a cup of bees is about 300 bees. A cup, not any cup, but a measure cup. You pour it in a jar. If you're doing an IFA roll, then you pour something like rubbing alcohol. Some people do a wash with water. Some people can use anything like maybe well, yeah. That's for the IFA roll I'm talking about. So you can do the IFA roll with, as I said, these kind of things. The sugar roll is icing sugar. I prefer to use sugar roll because you do not kill the bee. As you apply icing sugar, what you do, you take that same cup of bee, put it in a jar. The jars have a kind of mesh over at the top. You use about 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of icing sugar, and you kind of dust the bee, or the bees in the jar. You shake the bee and then shake it over a white piece of paper or cloth, and you'll be able to see the mites, and you can do a mite count. As we know, the mites prefer the drone brood. Anybody know the reason why? Anybody? Why mites prefer the drone brood? Yeah. As Mr. Remy said, the life cycle of the male bee corresponds to the life cycle of the mite. What's that? No, but, all right. Well, that's down. It made us sweeter. Yeah. So the life cycle corresponds. It takes. If you look at the stage at which the mite enter the cell, it's just about 24 hours before capping. Now with I believe a worker bee, you have the pupa stage is about 10 days, about 9 days. And then with the drone, the pupa stage would be about 12, 13 days. So that 2 extra days difference the young mites would emerge fully mature. With the worker cells, they would emerge kind of premature. So the chances of actual surviving is greater. So that's why they prefer the drones. Okay? And the way you look for varroa mite in drone cells, what you do, to look for it, you can look for the drones, take a knife and cut off the drones. And then you can shake these drones on a white piece of paper. Definitely you'll see the drones, the mites. Again, they should have a threshold as to amount of mites to bees. So if you have a bee, let's say you cut 10 drones, and you see on every drone there is about 5 mites, or 2 mites, or 1 mite, you already have a problem. You already have a problem. But we must remember that mites is like a tick on a dog. Bees can live with mites, but at what stage it will really create an impact. The mites can be there, but if the mites are at very low levels, you may not see the impact in terms of your honey production. But if it's over proportion, then you'll have that definite impact in honey production. And maybe eventually loss of hive, not the honey production alone, but the loss of the hive. Okay? You can also see signs of mites by, if you when you go into the cell, if you look at it, you'll see puncture pupa larva. This is the indication of mites. If you see, you look outside the hive, and sometimes in heavy infestation, you'll see bees crawling on the ground. Sometimes they have no wings. They're not looking too healthy. They're looking short and stump. These are indication of mites. But so one should never let it reach that level before controlling it. Symptoms of varroa mite, you have the parasitic mite syndrome. I don't know if any of you have seen that in your hive, where you see spotty brood with puncture cappings and even discolored larva people. Have you ever seen that? The experienced beekeepers? Anybody? Also, you have disfigured adult bee. We talk about disfigured, stunned adult bees, deformed wings, which I mentioned earlier. I'm sure some people have seen that. Okay, non-chemical or cultural controls. I mean, you as a beekeeper, you must try your best to control varroa. Because if you do not do that, what will happen? It will cause a dent in your pocket. Bottom line. So, one of the things is to be queen with resistant stock. I mean, in St. Lucia, yes, we sell queens, but we have to know what we're selling to people. And if we talk about resistant stock, you must have records of what you're selling. I must say that from 1998 to now, what I have realized that happened in St. Lucia is that our bees kind of build their own resistance as well to varroa mite. I can recall about within the first 5 years of varroa, we had massive losses. But even now, you'll hear that farmers do not treat for years, and these hives still survive. I can recall at the Caribbean Bee Congress, the guy from St. Peter was saying that actually that they have seen the mites going on to the bees, going on to mites and actually biting them off other bees. So the whole grooming aspect that is a sign of the bees have built a certain amount of resistance. Even swarming. What I have realized too is that we have been talking about, queens and, every year we change queens or every 2 years or whatever. But in St. Lucia, most queens doesn't last more than one season. And sometimes we have 2 swarms in St. Lucia per year. I mean, they may have different arguments, but it's a way that the bees have evolved in order to control. Because if they swarm, what they do, they break the brood cycle. Because the mites cannot survive without brood in the hive. They need the brood for survival. So, I mean, for as far as you can see, I mean, there is resistance. What we need to do maybe is look at what's the level of resistance we have now. With varroa. Okay, you can restrict brood rearing. I mean, that's what I say naturally do. You as a farmer, if you look at it the natural way, sometimes you can cage your queen for maybe a week or so that they wouldn't have brood for those mites to go into. Trap mites on drone brood. Since they prefer the drone cells, you insert a drone foundation or drone frame in the center of the brood nest. Allow the queen to come and lay in it. As it seals off, you discard it. Some people, they put it in the fridge, and then you can just put it back in the hive. The bees will clean it out and lay in it again. Some people will cut it out and these things. Okay? Screen butter board. I mean, this is something that we have been advocating from the ministry, use of screen butter boards. naturally, if you have something in your back, you always groom. And that's one of the ways that bees try to control bites, by grooming each other. So if you have a solid bottom board, those might will fall onto the bottom board, and then the next bee that will walk, they will climb back and go again. But if you have a screen bottom board, they will fall through and be eaten by ants. Actually, a mite cannot even move more than maybe 5 inches or without bees. You understand? So they would die. Smoke with grapefruit leaf. The smell of the grapefruit leaf also helps to detach mites. And you can see that if you insert a sticky board at the bottom of the hive. Formic acid, they say it was very good with mites. I mean, oxalic acid, they say work very well. You have the oils like nutmeg oils, all these oils. I mean, there are many products now in the world that they try to use for mites. And some of the products, even icing sugar as well. All these things, what would happen is that when you put things on a bee, they will groom themselves, like clean themselves off it. And in so doing, the mite will fall. So when you have a screen bottom board, then you have a more effective way of getting rid of mites, naturally. I mean, there are chemical control methods. Episton and the vallinate is, I mean, what are the strips that we use in St. Lucia? I also believe, and from what we have been seeing, there is some resistance being built up with Episton. And the reason for that is because of overuse of Episton. Many of our being used Episton continuously for years. And we have seen a resistance being built up. We look at the checkmate strip, which is Comophos, which again, that one is a harsh chemical. And I don't think we should allow it in St. Lucia. Because the reason for that I'm saying that is because we know our farmers. When you tell them do not do something, sometimes they do not adhere. You tell them they should not treat with supers on, sometimes they do. It's a reality. And Comophos is a very harsh chemical. So we don't want it to be in the food chain. So I don't think we should allow it to come to the nation. Okay. There are secondary infections of varroa mites. I mean, varroa is the parasite. But a parasite is a vector for other diseases. So we're looking at like APV, acute parasitic virus. I mean, I'm sure farmers have seen it, especially you've seen the bees looking not too healthy. They're crawling in front of the hives. Sometimes they may have wings, they may be short on stump kind of way, and they're not looking all that healthy. All right? Well, they have both acute and chronic. Okay? PMS, parasitic bite syndrome, which I spoke about. Sometimes you see the discolored larva. You see, like, especially, I've seen it especially with young hives, that you see the discolored larva, a lot of punctures of these things. If you do a sugar roll, then you'll find you have very high mite count. What I usually do for that one is to get rid of the frame, and sometimes I put back a new frame. Or give it strength from other hives, and usually, as the level of mites go down, it will just subside and come back. The deforming virus. I mean, everybody has seen that. You see bees without wings, a piece of wing, and this kind of thing. So all these are secondary effects of the varroa mite. Now we're going to move to trachea mite. As the name says, trachea mite, it lives in the trachea or the windpipe of the honeybee. It can be, in order to detect that, I mean, there are natural things that you can, natural ways. You like see they're crawling on the ground and these things, but sometimes you might not know it's varroa or trachea mite. But as I say, the small mite is microscopic, so you cannot see it with your naked eye. They feed and reproduce in the trachea of the honeybee. The diagnosis requires a microscope. The effect of trachea mite on honeybees, it will kill adult bees, decrease the ability it decreases colony ability to withstand periods of nectar flow or dove periods. Okay? Slow down the build up to the nectar flow. You might have a slow build up to the nectar flow. Decrease honey production, decrease the bee life. And you'll see crawling breeds at the entrance. Okay? There are a few treatments you can use. I mean, requin again with superior stock, resistant stock is one. Treatment with methadol, treatment with formic acid. I can remember in the 90s, we had people that used to come down from Vaca, which is some Florida voluntary, something that used to come and do every 2 years, to come and do April inspection in St. Lucia. And this was one of the things that we were looking for, trachea mites. I know today we have a lab, and soon we will start doing trachea mite tests. Okay? So at least I believe we're doing headway. Honey pests, honey bee pests. So we did parasites, now we do pests. We'll just talk about pests. Bee louse is a pest. It want to resemble a varroa mite, but it's not a mite. But they live on the bee as well. It doesn't cause significant damage as the varroa mite. We have never seen incidents of it in St. Lucia. Okay? Well, you know the wax moth. Both the greater and the lesser wax moth is a problem. Although it's a problem only in weak hives. When your hive is strong, they can control wax moth. All hives have wax moth. You may not see it because of the strength. They may impede it. The bees may impede the development, but it is there. Well, we know mites is the problem. If you leave your boxes there, it doesn't have bees, what will happen? The mites will come in, it will eat the comb, eat the woodware, and so on. Well, ants is also a problem. I mean, there are biting ants, especially those that call it, what do you call it, foamy murder. And they have those red big fire ants. These things can actually kill a hive. But usually they will kill a weaker hive. The stronger hives, they may not, but the weaker hives. Well, okay, well, look at experienced person say he wouldn't say that. Sometimes they can invade weaker, very strong hives. Maybe the strength of the ants nest may determine, you know. The small hive beetle. Well, for now in St. Lucia we haven't had any cases of small hive beetle. Okay, I know we have in the US, maybe even Jamaica may have, but we haven't seen any cases of small hive beetle. It's a beetle that actually comes into the box, laid eggs within the brood. So now you'll see like many larvas of the beetle within the brood. And that also what could cause your honey to go sour. Because sometimes they're in the supers and can cause the honey to go sour, cause it ferment. Toads, I mean, one of the biggest pests for us, for me in St. Lucia, I don't know for many beekeepers, is the toad. The frog, our so-called frogs, is a big pest to honeybees. I mean, I see farmers have created even kind of a mesh over the entrances just to prevent. I can recall a few years ago, Bodley had a few hives and I went there. And the frogs were actually inside the box eating bees. So that's one of the biggest problems we have. I mean, lizards also eat a few bees and birds. Okay?
Centipedes.
Well, yes, centipedes. So, but this, I mean, that's small. That's minor. That's minor. When we look at brood diseases, we in St. Lucia, we are still fortunate that we have those signs of American firebird and European firebird. The American firebird is the worst of the two, because in order to prevent, or if you have an outbreak of American firebird, you'd have to use harsh chemical like tetracycline, which is an antibiotic. And we do not want to use antibiotics in food. So basically what we're saying is that we should try to prevent entry of diseases in St. Lucia. We have chalk brood now. I mean, from about maybe 5-6 years ago, we realized that we have a certain surge in chalk brood. It could be the climatic factor, because now there is wet period all the time, and because it's a fungal disease, the fungal disease. Also, it could be caused because of varroa. It weakens the bee's ability, and now other diseases can affect the hive. So, right now we have seen increase in chalk brood. We have sac brood. Well, chill brood we don't have because we're not cold. In terms of adult bee diseases, we have pneumocystis. Pneumonia, what do you call it? Nosemia, sorry. And dysentery, which is like diarrhea, and parasitic. I mean, we have diarrhea in bees, especially nosemia. You have diarrhea. According to what you feed, can also cause diarrhea. I mean, the parasitic is caused by more varroa. But in general, what we're saying is that, I mean, what's in is in already. We should try to get rid of it. I mean, I know it's almost impossible to get rid of varroa. But what should happen, I believe, to all the beekeepers, we should look at also let your bees build your natural immunity. I feel every farmer that have many apiaries should look at an integrated pest management system, and even also to look at each apiary. Maybe instead of treating every year, treat every other year. So you look to see how best that these bees can build natural immunity. Because I have the view that any species for it to survive, it have to do what it have to take to survive. You know? So sometimes we have to let the natural thing take its course. Not too much at the expense of your pocket, but you have to try to do these things. Again, when you're requeening or when you're doing your splits, take it from stock that are resistant to some of these things, so that at least you're breeding better bees. Okay? I feel that's it. Thank you. Any questions? That bike should just be passing around.
It's not a question. It's just an observation, Marcus. After Hurricane Elsa, I went into an apiary to clean up, fallen branches and stuff. Mm-hmm. And in working a hive, I noticed an insect. It looks like a bee, but I don't know if it is a beetle, but it looks like a big bee. Mm-hmm. I took photo. I'll show you the photo. Mm-hmm. Because I said I would circulate it.
Yeah, but it's not, beetles in hives is nothing new. I'm sure that many of the farmers have seen beetles sometimes come in a hive and then bees kill it, or they would sift out the propolis.
No, that one I caught it live.
Okay.
I caught it live. It's bigger than the bee, but it has similar features.
Okay.
So I would like you all to actually help me to identify. I'll show you. I have it on my phone. Yeah.
But did you keep it? You did keep it. You beetle itself.
No, I burned the thing. I have the photo.
Yeah, the photo is.
And we have entomologists.
Yeah, we have entomologists. Yeah.
Because every now and then we get foreign insects here. They come in with the winds and so on, and so we can do some analysis and some identification.
But I mean, if it's I don't know how detrimental it is to the hive. But as I'm telling you, I mean, in many occasions, sometimes you see a beetle in your hive. It might be dead by then. Maybe if it was a beetle, maybe he was lucky to get it alive. But sometimes these things do happen. Okay? Any other questions?
Yeah, Marcus, you were saying that, when you're doing your splits and what you need to kind of do is basically look at the section of your bees that are actually resistant to the mites. How would you actually determine that? And how can you say, well, this set of bees are resistant to mite?
I mean, if you're treating all the time, it might be different. They're very difficult. But also, I mean, even though you're treating, there are hives that may just have higher populations faster than others. You understand? And also, that's why I said it's imperative that you as a beekeeper should have maybe 1 or 2 hives that you should not treat every year, but maybe alternate every other year.
The reason for this question, I know exactly what you're talking about, but for the people who are relatively new to beekeeping, I think those questions are very important for them to kind of know. I mean, I very well understand what you're saying, if you know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Marcus. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. A number of things I'm gathering there I'm wondering if we could put together, Marcus spoke about what is a normal hive versus an abnormal hive. And if we could have those kinds of things prepared in a kind of, management guidelines or something like that, so we can, share it with everybody. So you can know what to look for. This is a normal hive, and if it is so, therefore it's abnormal and so on. So part of the education process, I'm wondering. Yeah?
We do have tech talk for the
You all have those guidelines? Okay. Okay, excellent. Okay, I have to make a decision now. We started quite late. We lost some time. I see people looking a little tired and thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go for lunch now. And I hope everybody returns because we really have some exciting presentations this afternoon. So it is, what's the time now, please? It's about 19 past 1?
19.
Huh?
19 past.
Was it? 19 past 1, okay. Go for lunch. We come back here precisely at 2. And I'm promising you that you'll leave at 4. Okay? We were supposed to leave at 3, but remember we started very late. Is that too bad for you? Marcus, I see you shaking your head. What's the problem, Marcus? Boss? Huh? Because we really have 2 presentations that I want everybody to hear. Or one of the things we can do is to go for lunch now and come back by 1:45. Can you all do that? Yeah. Go for lunch, 1:45? Yeah, working lunch. Yes, so go please. Move. Go get your lunch, 1:45. Back in here. Okay, thank you.